study Arsenic album. From the time of Hahnemann to the present day, it is one of the polycrest that has been very much indicated and extensively used. It affects the whole economy, every tissue of the man. There are certain striking features in it: anxiety, restlessness, prostration, burning, and cadaveric odor. The surface of the body is cold, clammy, pale, sweating, and aspect is cadaveric. In chronic sickness with great debility, anemia, and from frequent malarial influences, poorly fed, and from syphilis, this remedy is of great service. And mental symptoms: the anxiety that is found in arsenic is intermingled with fear, with impulses, with suicidal inclinations, and with manias. It has delusions and active form of delirium with excitement. Sadness prevails throughout. The anxiety takes the form of restlessness. He constantly moves. If it is child, then he goes from nurse to mother and mother to nurse, from one chair to another and from one place to another. When in bed, he is constantly moving from one position to another. And if he is able to move, then he will go from one place to another, from one chair, from one room to another room, from one person to another person, and he will constantly moving. But when he is thoroughly exhausted, he goes back to bed. Restlessness seems to be mostly in the mind. It is the mental restlessness. It seems he cannot live. It is not the pain that drives him to despair, but it is the anxiety mixed with restlessness and sadness. This state prevails in all kinds of diseases, and uneasiness, anxiety, restlessness comes first in active form. When lying in bed, first he is able to move the whole body, and as the prostration increases, then he is only able to move his limbs. And finally the prostration becomes very much marked, and he lies in a perfect quiet in prostration. He appears like a cadaver. It seems that the prostration has taken the place of anxiety and restlessness. So remember that these states of anxiety and restlessness go toward the cadaveric aspect, toward the death. For instance, if arsenic is indicated in typhoid case, then first there is anxiety, restlessness, and that will end up in great prostration, and the patient lies like a cadaver. The mental state of arsenic in the beginning is anxious restlessness that leads to delirium and then even to insanity, and after that it is continued into disturbance of will and disturbance of intellect, and he thinks he must die, and there is no use of a doctor. There are thoughts of incurability of disease. Thoughts crowd upon him, and he is too weak to put them off. He lies tormented in bed with these kind of depressing thoughts. In delirium, he sees all kinds of vermin in the bed, loud moaning and groaning, gnashing teeth, religious mania and delusion that she has sinned away the day of grace. There is no hope for her, and she goes on thinking on religious matters till she is completely insane. And finally, she enters into a state of complete insanity and lies in complete tranquility, silence, and with aversion to talk. Fear is a strong element of arsenic. He dreads to be alone, he is insecure, and he wants company he can talk to. He has violent increase of fears and horrors. And there are many complaints that increases as the evening grows. Arsenic patient is very sensitive and fastidious, sensitive to smell, to surroundings of the room, to surroundings of the circumstances, and if this is carried out in a woman who is sick in bed, will be in great distress if every picture on the wall doesn't hang perfectly straight. This is a morbid kind of fastidiousness, and arsenic is simillimum in it. I would like to add certain things from Essence of Materia Medica by Dr. Vitholcus. Dr. Vitholcus says that arsenic patient has a deep-seated insecurity, and out of insecurity there is a tendency to depend upon others. Arsenic patient surrounds himself with people because of the insecure concern about his health. He has a fear of being alone. It is an actual need of someone to be present near him, on which he can be dependent. He is a sort of person that needs more than a company. Arsenic patient is very possessive about money, about people, about everything. And he hardly shares a relationship of give and take. But he is a bit selfish kind of a person, always taker in a relationship. And if he will support somebody, he will expect the support in return. And he is miser, always collecting things. If something happens to someone, arsenic patient will think first of himself. It is not like phosphorus. Phosphorus will wholeheartedly think of other person and will try to help him out of the way. If a car accident has happened and phosphorus patient wholeheartedly will go toward that incident and will try to help the victim and will think himself at his place and try to help what he can be able to do. But arsenic patient will think, oh, what if it happened with me, or it could happen to me. If you have two patients in your clinic, one is arsenic and other is phosphorus, phosphorus patient will plead for the help, whereas the arsenic patient will demand it. This is the difference, how he is clinging to you, and you will feel the pressure of the patient. Homeopathy is bound to feel the weight of a arsenic patient. Next, we know that arsenic patient is very fastidious, but it should be very clear that we as homeopath don't prescribe on the beneficial qualities. And if a patient is neat and clean, or if a patient is a perfectionist, that is a beneficial positive quality. We cannot prescribe on such things. But if there is a pathology beyond that beneficial, there is a compulsive need to be fastidious or perfectionist, then we can think of. On the other hand, we see people who are compulsively fastidious, obsessed by the need for order and cleanliness, constantly cleaning and straightening. That is arsenic. It is a pathological condition. It is an obsessive attempt to remove the anxious insecurity internally by ordering and cleaning in the external world. Fastidiousness of arsenic arises out of anxiety and insecurity. And we have two other remedies, Nux vomica and Natramur, which has fastidiousness. But in Nux vomica, it arises more from excessive compulsion to work, and he will give overly conscious attention to each and every minute details, and he has a sense of need for efficiency. And in Natramur also, fastidiousness is same as in Nux vomica, but he is extra conscious for scheduling of time. Arsenic patient manifests anxiety about health. Earlier, anxiety is in the morning. When the sickness penetrates deeper, arsenic will manifest more anxiety about health, fears that he will die, and it is first noticeable early morning, but gradually it occupies his attention throughout day and night. And at this stage, he has a fear of being alone. He craves for the company, always to depend upon. It is very important to distinguish the arsenic anxiety about health, because if we look in the repertory anxiety about health or anxiety for others, there are so many remedies. Anxiety about health in arsenic is basically arises out of fear of death, as if he is dying, and he is very insecure and anxious about his health. Same is true about another rubric, anxiety for others. If we find in repertory anxiety for others, arsenic has a least concern for others, rather a fear of losing someone close to him, on which he is dependent. If an arsenic patient meets a stranger on the way in a new area, and he will like the company of a stranger to converse with, but as the stranger will ask that he has a problem in searching a hotel and he has no place to live, arsenic will immediately withdraw himself and he will only make superficial conversations. Arsenic patient will courteously express his consolation, but his attitude would be, "You have your own problems, what about my problems which I had?" On the other hand, the phosphorus patient will be immediately excited and say, oh my goodness, you have no hotel? Let me search." He pick up the phone and try calling many people. We have to take the whole case. We see that how one stage enters into another stage and how the symptoms in one stage varies and are different in another state. We have to note the course that the case has run in order to understand it clearly. Kent mentions a case of typhoid. When he visited the patient, he looked at him and said, "Doctor, there is no use of coming. I am going to die and I cannot be cured. You please go home and there is no use of your coming." Kent saw that on the other side his another friend was sitting who was giving him sip of water frequently, and Kent prescribed him arsenic and he was cured. He prescribed on one of the characteristic symptoms of arsenic, small quantity of thirst frequently. Arsenic patients with this mental state are always freezing. They cannot get enough clothing to warm up. They hovers around fire. Chronic arsenic patients are always chilly, pale and waxy. They cannot get enough clothing to warm up. Arsenic is full of puffiness and dropsy, edematous conditions of extremities, edema around eyes, of face and cavities, the swelling that pits on pressure. Arsenic in these swellings is related to the swelling of lower lid, whereas Kali Carb prefers the swelling on the upper lid, between the eyelid and brow. There is running through the remedy. A main striking feature is periodicity. In headaches, the striking feature of arsenic is periodicity. And in general, the arsenic is a periodic remedy. Complaints come on certain season and certain time. And this periodicity makes arsenic a very suitable remedy for malarial affections. And in headache, arsenic headache comes on every other day, 4th day, 7th day and 14th day. More chronic the complaints are, longer the aggravation cycle. In acute and sharp conditions, arsenic aggravation will be on other day or on 4th day. But in deep chronic complaints, aggravation will take place after 7th day. Or in psoric manifestations, aggravation will take place on 14th day. Burning is a main characteristic of arsenic. When the headache is of congestive character, there is heat, burning, pulsations inside the head, in the brain, and the patient is ameliorated by washing the head. There is a feeling as if head would burst out and face is hot. There is burning inside the head. It is better by cold air and cold application and washing the head. But when there is rheumatic kind of headache, outer part of head, scalp, nerves are involved, then the patient is relieved by heat, applying heat or covering the head. External complaints of head, neuralgias of face, eyes are all ameliorated by heat and wrapping up. The periodical headache of arsenic is found in all parts of head. There is throbbing, heat, burning and aggravated by intensified motion and light and associated with anxiety, nausea, restlessness and vomiting sometimes. Sick headache is of worst kind that come on every 2 weeks. There are headaches of one side of head, one side of scalp, aggravation by motion, light and noise, amelioration by walking in cold air and cold application. Then there are dreadful occipital headache that come on after excitement, exertion or walking in heat or sun. After becoming heated, headache comes on. Natrum mur is an analogous remedy in periodicity and in many complaints. Arsenic headache is ameliorated by lying in dark room and lying on the head with 2 pillows. Many of the arsenic headaches are aggravated between 1 to 3 p.m. after noon meal and last whole night. Arsenic has a congestive kind of headache in intermittent fever during the chill stage. A peculiar feature of thirst is that there is no thirst during chill except for hot drinks. Thirst begins with the beginning of heat and it is for the small quantities just to moisten the mouth. But when the sweat breaks out, thirst increases and he drinks a lot of water. More he sweats, more he desires to drink water. Headache is during the chill and it increases and become congestive and throbbing during the heat. At the end of the heat, sweat breaks and it ameliorates the headache. The secretions and excretions of arsenic are acrid and excoriating. Discharges from the nose and eyes causing redness around the parts. This is true of all the fluids from various orifices. In ulcers, there is thin, bloody, burning, excoriating discharges, and the odor of discharge is putrid. All the discharges from uterus, urine, feces, expectoration, licoria are all putrid, and ulcer is so putrid that it smells like the decomposed flesh. Arsenic produces tendency to bleed. There is bleeding from every orifice, bloody discharge from mucous membrane, and in high-grade inflammations there is hemorrhage from bowels, from lungs, uterus, bladder, and anywhere mucous membrane exists. Hemorrhage of black blood and smell is putrid. Gangrene and sudden inflammatory conditions are common. Gangrene and erysipelatous inflammations suddenly after some injury, gangrene in internal organs, and it is the sudden inflammatory conditions that take on malignancy and gangrenous conditions. Inflammation will go to bowel within few days with horrible offensive discharge, vomiting of clot of blood with burning and tympanic conditions, and you will see sudden malignant kind of conditions with this inflammation of bowel when the patient is relieved by heat and he wants to be wrapped up and he is very restless, anxious, prostrated, then it means arsenic. And if the patient wants to be uncovered, wants cold air, open air, and cecal core can be thought of. Arsenic in its nature has alternation of states. Alternation of states means the patient has two diseases in a body. Kent mentions a case to illustrate the alternation of states. There was a patient who was suffering from periodical sick headache, which was ameliorated by applying cold over the head. Headache came every 2 weeks, and more the cold he applies, he feels better. And then these periodical headaches will go for long period, and that will be replaced by the rheumatism of joints and extremities. This rheumatism of joints and extremities is associated with swelling and edema, redness, which is ameliorated by sitting near the fire or by heat. This will last for some time and then will subside, and again headache will come back, and headache will subside after some time, and again rheumatism will come back. For such states, arsenic is a very wonderful remedy. Sometimes the remedy covers the whole feature of alternation of states. In arsenic, there is headache that alternate with physical symptoms. And in podophyllum, we find that there is headache that alternate with diarrhea. And one more remedy, arnica, there is mental symptoms alternate with uterine symptoms. Catral states involves eyes, nose, throat, and the patient is always freezing, sensitive to draught of cold, changes in weather, and always want warm drinks, warm wrapping, and warm room. Sneezing, coryza with inflammatory condition of nose, throat, larynx, chest and bronchi. Cold begins in nose and extends downward to throat, causing dry, hacking cough, which is ameliorated by hot drinks. It is difficult matter to find a remedy for coryza that extends to chest and bronchial tubes. Often we require change of remedies. Acute fluent coryza with burning excoriating discharges and ameliorated by eating and drinking warm and hot food and drinks. This is a cheap modality that enable us to choose between SIPA and mercurius. Arsenic has fluent discharge which corrodes the lips and wings of the nose, and burning is more prominent in arsenic than mercurius and alum SIPA. It often follows after mercurius. Arsenic is very much useful in affections of lungs and bronchial tubes. When the patient is wheezing, coughing with frothy expectoration and cannot lie, and there is amelioration by drinking warm drinks, hot food and wrapping up, sitting near the fire. And the patient is prostrated, feels very weak and unable to move, and air passages are constricted. Arsenic is especially useful in asthmatic conditions after suppressed eruptions, or in lung diseases after suppressed eczema, or in pneumonia after retrocedent measles. Nash remembers a case of asthma of years standing. Once he was called at midnight. A lady who was having asthma always got attack between 1 to 3 am and was patient, breathless, and she was in a fearful state and felt that she will die till morning. Nash prescribed arsenic 30 and it cured her. Arsenic affects the whole mucous membrane from lips to anus, whole alimentary canal, in which the lips, tongue and mouth is dry, parched, cracked. Tongue may be dry with red raised papillae or white as chalk or lead like brown, blackish, especially in typhoids. Mouth and throat is dry, ulcerated, gangrenous and feels thirsty for small quantities of water frequently. Stomach is so irritable that even a small quantity of food or drink excite vomiting or diarrhea. Immediately after eating or a sip of water will excite vomiting or stool or both simultaneously. He vomits all kind of substances, water, mucus, bile, blood and coffee ground substance. Pains in stomach are terribly aggravated if something cold is taken. Warm drink and warm food somewhat ameliorate, but cold is immediately ejected either upward or downward. Abdominal pains are extreme, intense, and there is burning all the way from mouth to anus. All mucous membranes burn intensely, and there is twisting and turning in all directions, and patient is anguished, restless, and fearful, and cadaveric odor is also very prominent. Patient desires to be well covered in a warm room, warm applications, and over the abdomen, warm application ameliorates somewhat. Looks cadaveric, smells cadaveric. If you open the room of the patient, you will feel a pungent smell, and he is well wrapped in warm clothes. And if you see in a similar condition that the patient desires cold air, cold applications wants to be uncovered, then cecal core is the remedy in similar situation. Diarrheas of all kinds of stool, from simple watery to bloody and horribly offensive black stools. In arsenic, we will find from simple irritation of mucous membranes to the extreme intense inflammatory conditions and even malignant states. Purging is sometimes present in arsenic but not like podophyllum and acid phos. Arsenic is not so commonly indicated in cholera in gushing phase. When gushing, purging and vomiting phase is over, leaving the patient exhausted and cadaveric like appearance with cadaveric odor in the room. At times, when the patient is coming down in early stages of rigor and chill is of very violent character, and the patient describes as if something icy cold water is rushing through his vessels. He feels rushing through the body the ice cold waves. And when the fever starts and he is hot from head to foot, and then he describes as if something very hot is running in the vessels. Some hot steaming water is rushing in the vessels. Then comes on sweat, dyspnea and all complaints in which he feels weak and prostrated and become cold. Sweat sometimes relieves the fever and pains, but it doesn't relieve the exhaustion, and the patient is very much prostrated and exhausted. Many of the complaints are aggravated during sweat stage as thirst. He says that he can drink the well dry. Give me enough water. Give me a bucket full of water. During the sweat stage, he is extremely thirsty and wants large quantities of water to drink. And in fever stage, he wants often and a sip of water, frequently small quantities of water. And in chill stage, he wants hot drinks. The striking feature of arsenic chill is its irregularity of time. It has afternoon chill, after midnight chill, and sometimes morning, and sometimes 1 p.m., and sometimes 3 to 4 p.m. Arsenic is very useful remedy in eruptions of genitals, eruptions and ulcers that burn, smart and sting. Herpetic vesicles appear upon the foreskin and labia, and they spread from the outer margin. We call them phagedenic because they spread from the outer margin and they become larger and larger. And there are two remedies, arsenic and mercor, for these. Spreading ulcers eat in every direction and become larger and become very offensive and follow the opening of a bubo in the inguinal region. Little watery discharge keep on coming and spreading the whole area around that opening, and there is no tendency to heal. In male organs, there is dropsical conditions, there is edematous penis and scrotum, and in females there is swelling of vulva, and there are burning discharges that sting, erysipelatous eruptions, syphilitic eruptions, ulceration, when there is stinging, burning discharges. Licorial discharges are very profuse and excoriating, and there is much itching and burning, and it makes the part sore. And menstrual discharges are also very excoriating, and licoria is intermixed with menstrual discharges. Suppressed menstruation goes for months, and it is as good remedy in anemia as ferrum. Arsenic and ferrum are very good remedies for anemia. To sum up arsenic, few things to be taken into consideration. That is anxiety. In the early stages of all sickness, there is great anxiety, restless, and the patient moves from one place to another. There is certain great prostration. All the secretions and excretions are excoriating. In last, the great keynote is burning, restlessness, great prostration, and midnight aggravation and amelioration by warm and hot drinks. Vomiting and stool simultaneously, aggravation after eating and drinking. Intense thirst, drinks often and little, and cold water or cold drinks aggravates. Patient is very fastidious, wants everything to be in order. Arsenic patient is very insecure and he wants to be surrounded by the people to depend upon, to cling to. Acute, sharp, darting or fixed pain in apex and through upper third of right lung is a